So many people out there trying to tell you which 401k to invest in with general basic info, but almost nobody shows you what the actual numbers are to help you decide on your own which one is truly best for you. What's up, everybody? This is Positive Finances. For those of you that don't know me, I am Jose, and on this channel, we'll be talking about everything and anything that affects you and your money. Today's video is requested by one of our subscribers, Maria Barber, as you can see here, where she asked if I could make a video explaining more in detail on the pros and cons of a Roth 401k and traditional 401k with an example. She is a visual person, so seeing the numbers will help her make better sense of this. Well, Maria did a bunch of research to make this video, and I hope the information here will help you better understand on which 401k is best for you. And with that in mind, if any of you have a certain subject you might need help with, then feel free to ask in the comments below, and I will try my best to either answer your question in the comments, or if needed, I'll make a video for you to help clarify any questions that any of you might have. If you want to skip ahead or go back to a certain section that passed, I added some timestamps below, so feel free to check them out. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about. First, for my beginners, we're going to briefly go over what a Roth 401k and a traditional 401k are and how they work. We're going to talk about contributions, withdrawals. We're also going to talk about additional factors to consider, like where you live, how old are you, when do you want to pay taxes, what type of investor are you, should you pick only one between the Roth and the traditional, or should you invest in both? And most importantly, we're going to be punching in some numbers in a couple online calculators so that you can see the differences between the two 401ks. Okay, so let's get straight into it. How a Roth 401k works versus a traditional 401k. In a Roth 401k, you invest after tax money, meaning your employer first pays you, and then after you pay your taxes on your income, then you invest clean, tax-free money into your Roth 401k. The tax-free money you invest into your Roth will then in return grow 100% tax-free in your Roth 401k. And later, when you plan to withdraw during retirement, you do not have to pay any taxes on any other funds you withdraw. For a traditional 401k, you invest pre-tax money. And by that I mean your employer pays you, and before you get tax taken out of your check, you automatically invest untaxed money into your traditional 401k. The untaxed money you invest into the traditional will grow nicely, but later when you plan to withdraw during retirement, you will then have to pay income taxes on the funds you withdraw. Now that we have that cleared up, let's get into the good stuff and jump into the computer. All right, so here we are. We're going to start off on this calculator, and then I want to say that all the calculators that I'll be using on this video, I'm going to go ahead and add them down in the description below, so that way you could feel free, come in and play around with the calculators as well and punch in your numbers to see how this lines up for you. So in this example, let's say you are 30 years old and you have an average income of $80,000 a year. All right, the reason we have 80,000 here is because we can come over here and check out what the average income for the U.S. households. We have a median family income of $79,900. So I just went ahead and rounded the number off to $80,000 to be able to represent the average American household. All right, and then the tax rates. We're going to look at the tax rates that we are going to compare. Here we are inputting our current tax rate of 12%, and then we are predicting that we will retire with a tax rate of 12%. If you're not sure which tax rate that you will be at or are at, then you could just easily come down here and scroll down towards the bottom, and at the bottom you'll see filing status of federal income taxes for 2022. And if you are married, filing jointly, and you have a combined income of $80,000, then that will put you in the 12% tax rate. So we just went ahead and put it on the 12% tax rate onto here. So we're predicting that our tax rate is going to be around 12%. And then we also predicting that when we retire, we are going to be pretty much within the same general area that we are currently right now. So that'll put us at the 12% tax break as well. As far as for hypothetical return, if you were to invest into the S&P 500, the S&P 500 has been around basically since the 1950s. And since the 1950s, it has maintained an average of 10.5% return. So with this 10.5% return, we just went ahead and input it on here for now that we have an average of a 10% return. That's how much we expect to receive for our investments if we were to be investing into the S&P 500 for our retirement accounts. The earliest that you could potentially pull your money out of a retirement account is at age 59 and a half. So I went ahead and put on here the earliest retirement you could possibly do, which is age 60. If you want to put higher age, like you put it up to 65 or whatever the case might be, you can do that as well. But for today's example, we're just going to do from age 30s up to age 60. The contribution amount, so 12,000 out of 80,000. That's how much I put on here that should be invested. And the reason for that is that most experts will recommend that you should save anywhere between 10 to 15% of your pre-tax income into a retirement account. All right, so your gross income, as an example that we're doing right now, $80,000 is our gross income. 15% of 80,000 comes out to be $12,000. So that is why we have on here $12,000 as our set example. The pay frequency is weekly, but for this particular calculator, it doesn't make too much of a difference if you select weekly or some of the other ones. It pretty much comes out to be the same. Contributions that we are doing, we're comparing a traditional to a Roth. So I selected here a traditional. And then if we scroll down, we can see the results. Now, the results on here initially, as you can see with the information that we inputted in, a traditional 401k at age 60 is going to have $2,072,000 in the account, right? A Roth 401k, which the money was already taxed, is going to end up having a final balance of $1,824,000. On this column over here is after tax, right? So after you've paid your taxes, your final balance on your traditional 401k is going to be the same as your final balance on your Roth 401k because you currently have the same tax bracket. Your tax bracket during your working years was 12%, and your predicted tax bracket for your retirement years was around 12%. So that is going to give you the same amount. Now, there is a additional way where this traditional 401k will in the long term make you more money. Stay to the end and then I'll show you some extra tricks that you could do to where your traditional 401k will always beat out the Roth 401k as far as for how much total money it could potentially have for you at retirement after you've paid your taxes. So this is an example that we've already used here for equal tax brackets. Now let's just say, for example, if you are in a higher tax bracket currently at the moment and you predict that you are going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire. Let's see what the numbers will look like in that situation. So in that situation, your traditional 401k during retirement is going to have $2,072,000, while your Roth is going to have $1,616,000. Your traditional, after you've already paid your taxes, is going to have $1,824,000, which is going to be more than the Roth. So in this particular situation, if your current tax bracket is higher than your tax bracket that you predict that you will be at retirement because you're not going to be making as much money, then the traditional will benefit you more than the Roth would for this particular situation. If you're in a situation where you are new to the workforce and you fall within the 12% tax bracket, but you know later on you'll continue getting some more and you plan to build up some wealth and you're going to have some other income streams go along and you're going to end up falling in a 22% tax bracket when you do retire, then now that is going to change some. So here, after you repaid your taxes, your traditional 401k is going to end up with $1,616,000 and your Roth is going to end up with $1,824,000. So in this particular situation, it looks like the Roth is better off. But if you use the little trick that I'm about to show you here, the traditional will still beat out the Roth, even though at first glance it looks like the traditional is worse than the Roth. All right, so let's move on so I can show you these little tricks that I'm talking about where you could potentially get your traditional 401k to be higher than your Roth 401k upon retirement. So we're using the same example that we did earlier. We're going to have a household income of $80,000. We're going to input our location so that way our state taxes will be calculated as well. We are currently filing as a married couple, right? And again, this calculator is going to be down in the description as well. For this example here, we have zero balances on our 401ks and IRAs. So this right here will be an example as if we would be doing a Roth IRA. All right, so the numbers we see here are the numbers we're going to be using for a Roth IRA calculation, because remember, Roth IRAs are funded with after-tax money. After you've already paid your taxes, then you invest into your Roth accounts. All right, so first we need to calculate to see what our taxes are going to be. So the marginal tax bracket, we fall, just like we said earlier, within the 12%. FICA, which is Social Security and Medicare. We have our state taxes, our local taxes, all included onto here. And then we're going to have the grand total. So the total income tax that we will have for this situation is $17.56, where we will have a total of $14,052 that we would owe on $80,000. This will be the amount that we would have to pay in taxes for this particular year. Now, after we've already paid these taxes, we will have this income left over. This will be our take-home money. So make sure we'll focus on our take-home money, because this is going to be important later on. Because we still have not removed the Roth contribution out of this. So keep this in mind that the Roth contribution still needs to come out of this total take-home amount. But now let's compare to what if, instead of doing a Roth investment, what if we do a traditional investment? So here are the numbers for a traditional. So for a traditional, remember the traditional, we have the same situation. So we have $80,000 as household income, same location. We're still married, filing jointly. And now we will be able to claim a deduction on our income. So the deduction, because the traditional 401k is pre-tax money, that means that money does not get taxed initially. So you will be able to put it here as a write-off, okay, as a deduction. All right, you can't do the Roth here as a deduction because the Roth comes out afterwards. But you can put anything that is pre-tax, anything that is before taxes, you could put on here. So that's why we have the $12,000 for the traditional 401k. So we'll go ahead and scroll down, and now we are going to see that our total amount of taxes that are due are much less than the previous example, right? So on the previous example, it would still fall in the same category. We have the marginal tax rates, the FICA, which is the Social Security and Medicare, state and local, everything's the same. But for this one, our effective tax bracket is actually a 15.16, and the taxes that we owe are just $12,125, which is lower than the previous example, right? So you see that our income after taxes is 67. Then you have the retirement contribution is going to come out, which is 12,000, which will give us a take home of 55,000. Now let me take you to another chart so that way you can see these numbers side by side. So on here we have a traditional 401k, which is pre-tax on this column, and we have the Roth after tax 401k in this column. So we started off, both of them have a household income of $80,000 each. The pre-tax contribution is for here for the traditional 401k. Okay, so we're going to deduct $12,000 that is not going to get taxed. On the Roth is zero because it's after tax. And then here, the after-tax contribution you can see is where we account for the $12,000 for the Roth. We have the total income taxes. This is how much taxes that we're going to be paying. So you'll be paying $12,125 as we saw on the examples. And if you're doing a Roth, you'll be paying $14,052 for taxes. Now that is going to take, when you subtract your contributions and your taxes, from your household income, you're going to have this take home down here. So as we can see, the traditional take home is $55,875, and the Roth take home would be $53,948. Now, if you subtract this 53 from this 55, the difference is going to be $1,927. So this is an extra $1,927 that you will have available if you do traditional investments. All right. Now, here's the trick. This is what you need to do with this extra cash to be able to get a good readings off of both of these investments. So you're going to take this amount and you're going to invest this amount that's already been taxed, and you're going to invest this into a Roth IRA. Now here I'm going to take you to an IRA calculator. So we're going to start off, as we said earlier, we're going to start off at age 30 and we're going to go up to the age 60. And then our total amounts that we said earlier is $1,927 will be our annual contribution. We'll scroll down. We're going to adjust this over here. So our tax return, since it is a Roth IRA, we're going to use 0% for Roth IRAs. The average annual return that we expect to get if we invest into the S&P 500 will be around 10%. The current balance is starting at 0. And then we are going to be contributing $1,927 every single year. And that will give us, by the age of retirement, they'll give us an extra $316,980. So this amount that you have on here, you'll go ahead and then you could now combine it to get your grand total when you go ahead and compare your traditional 401k and our last example. So our traditional 401k, as we said earlier, was $1,616,000 versus the Roth, which was $1,824,000. Now, if we scroll up here, it's going to tell us that there's a difference of $207,000 difference between the two. All right, so on here, it's telling you that the Roth appears to be better than the traditional, right? And then you'll end up having a difference of $207. But if you go ahead and invest the additional savings, as we mentioned earlier, the tax savings, you'll be able to get $316,000 extra that you can add on, which will now put the traditional ahead of the Roth in this particular situation. Now, to make sure that traditional beats out the Roth is by always investing the money that is saved that we saw here earlier. If you invest this money that you saved into a Roth IRA, then the total amount from your Roth IRA will make up the difference for any taxes that you paid on your traditional, and therefore it'll make your traditional final balance to beat out the Roth final balance. Now, I use M1 Finance for all my IRAs, and if you're interested and do not have M1, I will have a link in the description box below. If you use my link, both you and I will be able to get $50 each if you deposit at least $100 into a regular investment account, or if you deposit $500 into an IRA, which is an individual retirement account, within 2 weeks of opening the account. This does not cost you anything. It just helps us both on getting free money, and who doesn't like free money? All right, here are some additional factors to consider when picking between the two 401ks. Where do you currently live, and where do you plan to retire? If you live in a state that has high state income tax and you plan to retire in a more income tax friendly state, then maybe a traditional 401k is best for you to help you avoid state income taxes you would have to pay if you had a Roth 401k during your working years. Another thing is, how old are you? The younger you are, generally you will be in a lower tax bracket, and a Roth could be more beneficial to you. You know, when do you prefer to pay taxes? If you think your tax bracket will be pretty much the same during your working years and your retirement years, then the only question is when you want to pay your taxes. Either one you pick, your final 401k balance will be pretty much the same. What type of investor are you? Do you just want to keep it as simple as possible? If this is you, then maybe the Roth 401k is better for you. You will simply pay your taxes up front, and then you will not have to worry about a single thing during your retirement years. You won't have to worry about trying to calculate taxes or anything else like that. You just simply withdraw what you need and no taxes need to be paid out. Are you a detailed oriented investor that wants to play the system to get the best deal possible? Then if this is you, you can possibly go for the traditional 401k and invest the tax savings into a Roth IRA to help you maximize your return as seen in the earlier example. And the biggest question of them all is, should you only pick one between the Roth and the traditional, or should you invest in both? I hate to say it, but only you can answer this question. But in reality, there is no wrong answer. Personally, by the time I retire, I will have both the Roth and the traditional 401k. All right, so I try to put out as much information as possible in this video. Some of you might have some unique situations. So if you feel you need more clarity, I highly recommend reaching out to a local professional to walk you through additional steps that you might need. If you like this video and want to see more, do me a favor and give me a big thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, click on the notification bell to be notified every time I release a new video. All right, and if you want to visit my channel to check out more videos, go ahead and click on the picture of my head right there. It'll take you straight to my channel. And if you want to learn how much you should be investing into your 401k and IRA, then go ahead and click on this video right here. And remember, always stay positive. Together, we can do this.